if I lose, I'm going to look at it and be like, all right, I can chalk that one up, but I'm going to come back and try to do a little better next time. That's a winner to me. It isn't necessarily, did you get the W? It's how did you come back from it?
A switch point moment is a moment in time that fundamentally changes your life because of a connection you made with another human being. My name is Sean P. Neal, and this is the Switch Point Project. And hey, everybody, welcome back to the Switch Point Project. I am excited that you have decided to join us today. My guest, Sid McNairy, is the architect of the art of peaceful living, and he's a spiritualist in every sense of the word. Sid has transformed himself to help others find the relationships to connect to their highest and best self. And there are 4 words that I've heard Sid talk about that he would like people to know him for, and that is when at everything peace. I want you to think about that for a moment. When at everything peace. And the question becomes, how do we find the strength and the courage and move forward and win at everything that we do, and we do it in peace? That's just a hint of what we're going to be talking about today. So take a few minutes, listen to a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back with my special guest today, Mr. Sid McNairy, right here on the Switch Point Project. All right, and Sid McNairy. Sid, thanks so much for joining me today. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I appreciate you having me.
I just wanted to kind of start. I know that you were born in Baton Rouge. Is that right?
Yes, Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
All right. So, yes. So, first of all, let's just kind of frame for everybody a little bit about your childhood and some of the things that influenced you when you were younger. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in Baton Rouge and what you experienced?
Well, my Baton Rouge was early, and so what I experienced was nature. Like really getting out and being in nature, as well as a sense of faith. Faith, because in Louisiana, New Orleans area, there's all different types of spirituality there. And so faith is something that everyone's pretty much practicing in one way or another. So I had a nanny who thought that I needed to be protected. So then she dressed me in all white and would care for me in different ways. And yet when I would go out and play, you go outside. Now in Louisiana, you go out towards the bayou, you stand a chance to not be the victor. You can run into something that doesn't necessarily isn't what you should do. And so I had a couple run-ins with thousands of red ants that would cover me because I would try to test them. I used to try to kick the ant mound over, and they would literally, it's like seconds all over you. And so that only happened twice, because the first time I thought I wasn't smart enough to get away, and then the second time I was like, nah, they're strong enough to keep me.
Absolutely.
So the different things like that. That's what I remember most about Louisiana was just having that space to really get out, play, and just get connected to spirit. That's what I think started my foundation. And then we moved. My dad first moved us to California, Oakland. We didn't stay there long. We went back to Louisiana, and then we went to the D.C. area. And so by the time I was 7, we were in D.C. And that started my sports career. And so that was, you call this the switch point. That instantly switched and turned on a different light, because at 7, I'm in sports. Yeah, sure. And at 8, my coach teaches us to meditate. And meditation and sports have been in my life ever since.
Wow. And so you've kind of been, from one side of the country to the other, north, south, and in between. From a cultural standpoint, and I understand, you were younger when this happened, but from a cultural standpoint, what kind of things did you experience, with those different transitions early on?
Well, I'll say first being in Baton Rouge, I felt like everyone looked like me. You know, there's a lot of
Sure.
mixed people. Like all like the French came. They actually, from my understanding, that the slaves that were in New Orleans were treated totally different than the slaves anywhere else in the country. And so that melting pot, which created all these different shades of people and people just loving people in so many ways, that's what I felt like I walked away from Louisiana. And then so, a lot of times people think, even though most of Maryland's south of the Mason-Dixon line, most people think that, oh, you move north and things get better racially. I've lived in northern Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. I've lived in the Midwest where you are. I've lived all over this country, and that's not a truth. Like it is.
Wow.
It's actually in some ways hidden, and so that was a stretch. I mean, that was. I ended up, even though I meditated and was in sports, I ended up fighting a lot when we moved north, where it was like fighting wasn't even a thought in the South.
Sure.
So that was different for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the physicality of football. Football is a great place to expel some of that energy and some of the internal sides. But then there's this yoga side. Now, I heard in an interview that you did many, many years ago that you have been practicing yoga since 96, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Physical part.
So the physical part, because you did say, the meditative side. But we look at those two things, and I don't think that, maybe somebody playing football gets it, but, the outside world doesn't necessarily put those two things in the same space together. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about how uniting, yoga and meditation with the sport really, impacted you and started, your journey down there?
Well, first, sports drove me to yoga because I needed to recover my body. The physical practice of yoga, yet the meditation part of yoga, which all yoga leads back to meditation, going into myself. And so the meditation piece with sports gave me a sense of being aware of me. That combination, how does my body feel on any given day in order to go perform at the best of where I am? But then also in the space of being in the struggle and still being able to access my mind that allows me to perform at my highest, right? To shift into that zone, as we call it in sports. And so that gave me a different vantage point than most athletes, I think. Then to turn it into, okay, the physical asana practice helped me to remember and restore my body, that restored my mind to be at peace again. So it took me in a full circle, having that access point in those different ways, for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that the sports world is acclimated to, yoga and meditation, or is that something that's still, foreign in the sports world?
I would say on the whole, percentage wise, I think sports are always ahead of the general public. I mean, let's look at just the space of racial relations. In sports, you get along or you lose. Sports integrated like Alabama and Bear Bryant. They got their butts kicked by UCLA, and we're like, that'll never happen again. So we've got to find ourselves some brothers that can play football and can come here, and this whole town, you're just going to get over it because we're going to bring them in and we're going to win football games. Now you look at Alabama's football team, they're definitely more integrated than the state of Alabama as a whole. So it's that, to me, sports have just always paved the road. I remember when my dad took me to Purdue to drop me off for college, we sat outside of Harry's Chocolate Shop, and he said, right here you can look at the history of Purdue. And when Harry's Chocolate Shop, when people would go in, it was it was a chocolate shop that underneath, this was in Prohibition, underneath it was a liquor store, right? Like, or a bar. And so the people would come, and at first they's like, no, we don't allow black guys in here. And they're like, well, we're not going to play. We're not going to play for your football team and not be able to be in this town and go where we want. So then they changed that. Then they could come. Then all of a sudden it was like, okay, we don't want you guys in here dating the white girls. Well, then we're not going to play. Like, they kept pushing that. That's my dad walked me through the history of Purdue by showing me how, as an athlete, we had more power than we thought, you know, at that time when I was going to school, because it wasn't civil rights movement, but it was like, hey, athletes have been changing this all the time. And I see it today. Like, people, we just went through this whole space of George Floyd and all the other people, Breonna Taylor and all the other people that went through all the different things. And they've been going, but yet they're shifting now finally. And so one thing for sure, like, that came up was like, how do we create space at the table? Well, athletics are showing us, you know, how do we create space at the table? The NFL now is creating ways to bring forward more coaches. Even though they had more coaches at one point, it went downhill, and now they're coming back. Same thing for me. I see that it actually, sports, when I got in, I had this class at Purdue. It was called Sports History. And that's when I learned history. Like, when they lined it up with sports, it was like, oh, okay, now you're talking about this war with the Nazis, and Jesse Owens went and ran and did this, that, and the other. And you got Jackie Robinson, you got, what's his name, Brown for the Browns, you know. You got all these different people. It's easy for me to track history as soon as it sparks something in me. And so that is where I think athletes and meditation, as you asked, like, athletes are already ahead of the curve in that way, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's interesting the parallels that you draw, you know, between athletes and sports and, you know, the race relations, because, you know, we are seeing that pendulum swing. And in 2020, we might say we saw the pendulum swing to the extreme other side. We saw things, you know, really, really happening. But there has to be, I think, to begin that movement, because it's for so long been on the wrong side of history. When it comes to, you know, this idea of the team mentality and that we all, you know, can come together. And I want to take this outside of sports for a second and look at, you know, just the human race. I've often, you know, sat in circles with my friends and they'll laugh at me because it's, you know, it seems like such a trite and simple idea to say, why don't we just all get along? Why don't we find, we're here on this planet together. Why don't we just find the commonalities and help each other survive this ride that we're on and do the best we can? And yet, you know, we see a war in Ukraine where thousands upon thousands of innocent people die. So I'm going to take it into that deep mode and say, what are some of the things that we, in your opinion, as everyday people can start to do to shift that wave, to make sure that what happened with George Floyd and everyone else and then across the world isn't in vain, that we're actually making progress forward?
Well, for me, you know, I'm writing my next book. I'm just finishing outlining 33 chapters. And it's on the art of peaceful living. Like, we came from peace. We came from peace. We come into peace as a baby. We forget it. And if we could just go back to making that our foundation, there's a lot of power there. You know, from that as my foundation, as peace has become my foundation, if it moves the other way, I'm so aggressive about getting back to my peace that I'm just going to get back there quick. You know,
I love that conundrum of,
right.
I love that. The idea of being aggressive about your peace.
Right. Like that,
dive into that a little bit.
Gandhi. And Gandhi, that was his thing. Like, he was aggressive about his peace. When I heard that, I was like, oh, finally I get why I'm aggressive. I just want peace. And when, you know, I have this song that I wrote, Give Me Peace. And the main line is, give me peace and I'll take the pieces. You gotta,
Yeah.
it's made it so easy for me that when I have peace, I can just handle all the other pieces that come at me. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's just like, there's a storm coming. Okay, well, I'm at peace. Then I'll be the eye of the storm, move the storm around me as opposed to through me. So it's that I think the general public, when we get a grasp on what peace really is, will be okay with helping someone else, because we'll start to realize that if Johnny across the way doesn't have peace, then neither do I really, Well, we used to say that when I was coaching football. We'd have summer camps for kids, and I remember the head coach being like, if we don't have these camps for these kids and give it to them, the ones that need it and can't afford it, they'll be the same kids sticking us up on the corner. So for me, that's always been part of it. Like, how do I land in a way that elevates someone else so we can all have peace together?
Yeah. And I've heard you talk about this before. There's this personal accountability to, what we want out of the world, what we want out of the world for ourselves. And I've heard you talk about, if that's what you want, then you have to step into it first.
Yeah.
And I think I would love to hear, you dive in just a little bit deeper on what that means when it comes to some of these bigger issues like race relations and war.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of accountability, it's every time that I've ever looked and pointed a finger at someone else or something else saying, this is why I'm in dis-ease, right? Like, this is why I'm upset. Really, one, just in the physicalness of pointing a finger out, there's three more pointing back at me. So then I had to start evaluating me. Now, the reason I see the world as I see it is because it's being seen through my own eyes. If I don't like what I see, if I have on sunglasses and they're dirty and I don't like what I see, I clean the sunglasses off. I think we make things so hard when really they're so simple if we just look at what we do on a regular basis. So accountability is reclaiming my power. The more I hold myself accountable, the more I reclaim my power, the more I can step into and say, okay, there's a person on the street that didn't eat tonight, and I just threw away my food. Okay, I'm part of that problem. Do I really want to take that level of accountability and say, okay, how can I be the solution? If everyone starts doing that, and I can do it more, I'm not, sitting here like, oh, I'm the best at it. I could do it more, just in the sense of sitting with that. I know that we keep our refrigerator pretty empty. We go to the store. I go to the store almost every day. Buy what I need, come back home, make it, cook it, whatever. If there's leftovers, I don't have to go to the store the next day. Yet, how many people are sitting there with food in their cupboard that they may never eat? We're part of the problem. We can be part of the solution.
You're known for the phrase win at everything. And when I first heard it, I thought, boy, that's a big statement. And the reason I felt that way, and just kind of be honest with you. The reason I felt that way at first was, it's like, well, is the point to always win? What does winning mean? Is winning the same for me as it is for you? Can you just kind of define that? Just take those words apart a little bit for everybody and help everybody understand what that means for you.
Well, initially, I think, I learned to win. Win meant 455 wins, W's in sports, and under 100 L's, right? So winning at everything for me was like, all right, I'm not going to let anybody else win if I have the power to do that. Then it became, all right, I was very fortunate that I had coaches that if you lost, you shake hands. You don't go to the locker room. I don't care what happened. You shake hands and you do it, and you congratulate that person for doing better than you did today. And if you don't like it, then you go adjust yourself and come back and win the next day. So that, I think, was such a huge lesson in my life of, okay, Now you have to learn how to win at even losing. There's a way to be a winner even when you're losing. It's not throw a temper tantrum. It's actually accept what you did. Now go back and do better. And so
I love it.
That's how it really lands for me. It's like, it's okay. It's not what I want. I play chess with people all the time. And there's some people that are definitely better chess players. They're world-renowned chess players. If I lose, I'm going to look at it and be like, all right, I can chalk that one up, but I'm going to come back and try to do a little better next time. That's a winner to me. It isn't necessarily, did you get the W? It's how did you come back from it? Even if you win, did you come back and say, okay, I'm going to be better? So like when I was coaching sports, it was like, all right, we won, but was that our best game? And if it wasn't our best game, then we better be better next time. Period. It doesn't. So if we hung 100 points on someone and we played the same caliber team next time and we only scored 50, we didn't play our best. And it's always do your best, So it's win at everything, even if that looks like losing.
Just for a minute, if you would, I know meditation, mindfulness meditation specifically is something that comes to mind when I think about self-awareness. Can you talk a little bit about your practice in meditation, yoga, and how that is helped you, raise your self-awareness to the place that you just spoke about?
Yeah. So meditation is part of the way I communicate with the awe. I've been working on calling it the awe. Like God, some people interpret that around their religion.
Right.
Spirit, my Native American elders would call it Great Spirit, and some people get hung up on different ways of that. But when I think of the awe, when I am in awe of something, it's like, whoa. Like the way an eagle goes and grabs a fish, and like swoops so fast if you don't catch it, it's gone. The way that anything in nature, really, when I think of being in awe and the creation of a tree, the creation of a project, the way humans build buildings versus an ant building a sandcastle, right? So there's all different types of stuff that I am in awe of, and the one that actually starts it is the greatest of all. So I'm trying to sit with that on calling it the awe. So in that sense, when I'm in communication, when it comes to meditation, that part of communication, of the process of communication, meditation, is how I listen, not only to myself, but outside of myself. And the first way to listening has to start with me. The second part of that communication is prayer. How do I use my words to create the reality that I see coming at me? So I'm very diligent on the words that I speak and how they're landing, because they are the creation. Whether I worry or I'm praying, I'm speaking to the awe. And how it's going to deliver it back is because of how I am. We talked about love in the 413 today, and I brought up the word agape. The Father is constantly giving love, and the Mother, however you want to look at it, the awe, is constantly giving us love. So then that's where that is. And then when it comes to the physical practice of yoga, I'm dialing into a frequency. I'm dialing in, so every time that I restore my body, I am tuning my body, which is like tuning a radio, to get me in it. That's what shows up for me. That level of, as you talked about, self-awareness shows up in those three parts. How am I speaking? How am I listening? What am I tuning into all the time? Yeah.
It's, when we look at the future, and I love to kind of take this as we start to round the end of the conversation today. When we look at the future and the fact that you have really made it your life's work to, share the things that have impacted you so deeply and to share those with others. Can you tell me a little bit about what the next 5 years looks like for you? What kind of things you hope to accomplish?
Well, one thing for sure, over the next 5 years, I want to help other people develop as leaders, like really, and what that looks like. I'm fortunate as a child. I was taking the leadership camps from 5th grade all the way through my time at Purdue. They would send me away to those kind of things, and so I have a lot of tools that allow me to lead, and so I look forward to being able to do that with people. My wife and I just met with someone, Navanya from the NFLPA, on creating workshops and retreats for couples so that, couples can move in a better way. Then probably a grander thing is creating centers that we like to call our home, where people can come home into themselves and get connected and be empowered and then go back into their society. So that's what I want to do. I want to continue to help people be their greatest version, because every time I help someone do that, it also pulls me forward in a bigger way. So I'm excited for that. I've got meetings with different people that are ready to help get that going. I actually have a meeting here at 3:30 today, so in a couple hours, that speaks to that. But really, just when I leave, I've been saying this, and I'm really stepping into that space of my own thoughts. I want to leave the world and know that the world will remember that I left it in peace for the duration of Earth.
Wow. So, Sid, you mentioned your wife, Liz. You're co-writing your next book, The Search for the Perfect Wave. And by the way, you're an international best-selling author of 7 books. Tell me a little bit about what we can expect to see in The Search for the Perfect Wave.
Well, The Search for the Perfect Wave, that's actually moved on the inside cover now. And because it has evolved. I mean, it was The Art of Peaceful Living, The Search for the Perfect Wave, because we both surf, and getting out on the water and what that means to us. And it has evolved to Peace is the Power to Live By, Win at Everything. So what people can really look forward to in that book is finding the peace program, how to live a life of peace, that everything grows exponentially for them, whether it's their relationships in their family, their relationships at work, being able to have access to the powers, that the universal laws that generate abundance in their life. So that's what I think people can expect. Excited for that, and it's a continuation. All of my books, I was talking to a friend today, and every book I've ever written, I've written it because it's like, I have a message to get, and if you're ready for it, pick up the book and you're going to get it. So I'm ready for that.
There are some folks out there that are going to hear this and they'll say, how do I learn more about Sid and his journey and what he's doing? What are some great ways for people to find you online or contact you?
Well, I'm on pretty much every social media platform, especially Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, as Sid McNairy, as well as Art of Peaceful Living. And then also people can go to artofpeacefulliving.com or sidmcnairy.com and find out more about us. And I'm always open to, if someone wants to schedule a call, get on the phone. I love connecting with people and see just what we can build together, because the world needs all of us. That's why we're all here.
Absolutely. This guy is the real deal. Sid McNairy, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Switchpoint Project. Thanks for joining us. Send your best to my wife, and I hope to bring you back on and get you both on here sometime soon. And I would love to get the both of you. I bet that would just be an amazing conversation too.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Thank you.
The Switchpoint Project is part of the Switchpoint Media Network. Switchpoint Media creates raw and revealing conversations that explore the intersection of self and social awareness, growth, and authentic human connection. For more great podcasts and videocasts, be sure to join us at switchpoint.media.